Okay, we ready to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is Mayor Atchison. It is currently 7 p.m. on March the 23rd. This is the beginning of the first ever virtual Westminster City Council meeting. At this time, I would ask that everyone please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to our agenda for tonight, ladies and gentlemen, this is a virtual meeting broadcast. We have verified we've had no public input on any of the items that we have on our agenda tonight. We will be recording this so it is available to everyone through playback. And at this point, I would ask the city clerk if she would please to take the roll.
Mayor Atchison.
Here.
Councilor DeMott.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Here.
Councilor Seymour.
Here.
Councilor Scully.
Here.
Councilor Smith.
Here.
Councilor Vols.
Here. Okay, thank you, Council. First item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes of the preceding meeting. We have minutes of March 9th and March 16th. Mr. DeMott, would you like to make the motion, please?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, I move that the City Council approve the minutes of the March 9th, 2020 and March 16th, 2020 meetings as presented.
Okay. Ms. Smith, would you like to do the second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, this motion carries. Next item on the agenda is presentations. We have none tonight. As a reminder, public comment was to be submitted by noon today. We have verified with the city clerk's office on multiple occasions this afternoon that we have received no public comments. First item after that is the report of city officials. Mr. Tripp, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor Atchison, members of council, and members of the public and staff that are listening to this meeting tonight. I want to just talk about COVID-19 for just a second. First of all, I want to thank the Westminster community, both our residents and businesses, for their reaction to this public health crisis, and by adapting their work and personal routines in a way that minimizes the spread of COVID in our community. Our community has been very compliant, I believe, voluntarily with all the things that have been requested. We really appreciate that. I want to also assure the community that Westminster and the outstanding staff that our city has are monitoring this situation. We're cooperating with our partner agencies regionally, and we're planning ahead to ensure the continuity of essential services and the economic resilience of our city. I think both those things are really important to understand. We're doing everything we possibly can to make sure, to make certain, I'll say, that all those services that you depend on come to your residents and meet you in the street every day. I want to also acknowledge the executive order that was put out by Governor Polis yesterday. As a staff, we'd like to share counsel that we find it to be a very measured approach to mitigate the impacts of COVID-19, to really toughly emphasize that people need to comply with this social separating rule that's out there, while minimizing the disruption of Colorado's economy. For more information that you might have, citizens, about COVID-19 and the things the City of Westminster is doing and our partner agencies, I would direct you to our website for more information. Thanks for an opportunity, Mayor Atchison, to comment on this.
Turn to the City Council if anyone has any comments they'd like to make. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I would like to thank our staff and everyone in our city for their great cooperation as we go through this very interesting and challenging time in our current history. Also, I would like to give a big shout out to all the school districts, Westminster Public Schools, Jeffco Public Schools, and Adams County 5-Star Public Schools. They've done a great job moving fast and efficiently, getting our students online, getting them out of classrooms, and getting everybody to work from home. Really great work, and I'm just really impressed. As a mother of a student in the Jeffco public school system, I just could not be more impressed with the system right now. And then finally, for those of you who are very concerned, as I am, for those who are most vulnerable in our community, our homeless populations, please know that the city is doing a lot of work to help those who are in need by providing shelters, information about where they can get medical assistance, food, and transportation, and also passing out vouchers for hotel stays. So please know that we have not forgotten our most vulnerable. We are working to assist them in every way. Thank you.
Ms. Seitz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say I share the appreciation of both Councilor Scully and City Manager Dawn Tripp for our resilient community. It's amazing how much the world can change in 2 weeks, and it has impacted all of us on a very personal and professional level. I also want to say thank you to the schools and the teachers who have had to really adjust on the fly and still have been able to make sure our kids have a meaningful educational opportunity but are safe. For a lot of our businesses, I know this is a stressful time. I personally know quite a few people who have already lost their jobs. But the city and this community, I know, are going to band together to support each other. So please, as you're practicing social distance, do remember small businesses within our community. Please buy gift certificates or order takeout or delivery because they are going to be hurt hard by COVID. In addition to the executive order that we heard from our governor, I know I've received calls all day from residents wondering, is Westminster going to go the way of Denver? And I heard recently that Boulder has also done a stay-at-home order. The answer is we're going to have deliberative discussions, and I would request from my colleagues that we have those as soon as possible, but we're going to act measured, responsibly, with an effort to protect public health and safety and our community economic resilience. So we're going to look at all of these things and determine what the right decision is for Westminster. And I really have to applaud the efforts put in from staff, from the leadership of Dawn Tripp and everyone involved in the partnerships they've had with our health departments and all of our neighbors. So thank you to everyone who's been supporting the community. I am hopeful that a silver lining that will come out of this is that we really see we are stronger together. And when we focus on we versus me, outcomes are better. I had a resident mention to me that there's a feeling of powerlessness. And I think we need to remember we have the power to tackle this, and that is the power to choose to stay home. To act not as if we don't want to contract COVID-19, but to presume we already have it and that we want to protect those in our community from contracting it from us. So thank you, be safe, be responsible, and consider the safety of your neighbors.
Mr. Seymour?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to give a shout out to our small business owners here in the city who are struggling mightily, but also to those who have found a way to keep moving forward and keep their employees, especially local restaurants that have stepped up, taken advantage of Governor Polis opening up the liquor delivery as part of their sales and having innovative ways of keeping their staff at least as a minimum so they can keep them employed. So kudos to our small businesses that are finding a way, and especially our restaurants. I encourage everyone, there's ways to get delivery, there's ways to get curbside takeout and be safe. If you ate out 2-3 times a week before, please keep doing so. Keep our businesses open and strong. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. DeMott, did you have a comment?
I do have a comment, but I also just to share with staff that I'm getting multiple messages that the live stream isn't working for everybody. So I'm not sure if that's something that we could check the technical details on. But I just wanted to follow up on some of the comments of my colleagues as far as what Denver's done and some of the other cities. You know, it's a delicate balance and delicate time in our society. As a free nation, you know, I think that freedom is one of the most important things that this nation has, but with it comes personal accountability. So what I would ask is, well, you're free to, you know, be as you are in this nation. I would also ask that you think about the personal accountability and risking others and yourself as we go through this time, because I think that is one of the responsibilities in a free nation such as ours. So, and on top of that, I would just echo my colleagues in thanking staff for getting this together. I know it was a lot of work for them to be able to host this council meeting in such a short period of time as things have progressed rapidly.
Ms. Smith, did you have a comment?
I'm good, Mr. Mayor, just echoing what everybody else has said.
Okay. All right, just to follow up on what most of the council has already alluded to, as everyone's aware, the city and county of Denver did go into a stay-at-home mode this afternoon. We, Westminster, along with our neighboring mayors in Adams County and Jefferson County, are all trying to get confirmation through the Tri-County Health and also through Jefferson County Health on what their stances are, so that we have that information available to us. We'll be meeting in the next day or so to make a decision of supporting the direction that the city manager will have as to whether or not we will go into that area. At the present time, only the city and county of Denver and possibly Boulder, and I've not heard of anyone else, but as the council has said, this is an ever-changing item that moves every minute. We do ask that you please abide by the rules of spacing, not have more than 10 people in your events. That is one of the issues that drove Denver to go to the stay at home, is because the amount of people who were in parks and public gatherings over the weekend, totally ignoring the idea of that you're not going to catch something. But unfortunately, that could happen. The governor supported the position of the city and county of Denver this afternoon in his press release, but he still did not go to the point of putting the entire state on a stay at home. Westminster will be thoughtful. We will evaluate what we are told by our health departments. We will guidance from the staff, and then we will make a decision along with our other partners. But this is a conversation that's going on. Even as I'm sitting here in this meeting, I have another computer going on with mayors around our neighborhood that are talking back and forth about the decision that we all need to make, and we want to be supportive of each other. So if there's any decisions that are made, those will be made public knowledge on the website. So please refer to that. Also, if you need directions on small business or other items that you may have questions on, please go to the website and look at that as your single point for Westminster to get information. There's also, if something you're asking is not there, there's a way for you to contact staff and they'll be able to get you answers for your questions. At this time, I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. This is a group of routine matters to be acted on with a single motion and vote. Since we did not have our regular meetings this day, I would ask as council, as I'm going to go through these one at a time, and then I'll see if there's a request for anybody to remove it. Item 8A, the financial report. Is there anybody who has requested to have this item removed?
No, sir.
Hearing none. 8B. Hearing none again. 8C. Hearing no request for anyone to have this item removed, I would ask for a motion. Councilor Scully, I think you're up for item 8, the consent agenda items A through C.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council adopt the consent agenda items 8A through 8C.
Ms. Seitz, I do you next.
Yes, second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second for the approval of item 8A through 8C as the consent agenda. Is there any comment by council? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, this is a roll call vote, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a roll call vote for the consent agenda items 8A through 8C. Mayor Atchison?
Yes.
Mayor Atchison votes yes. Counselor Demott?
Yes.
Counselor Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sights?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes. Counselor Seymour?
Yes.
Counselor Seymour votes yes. Counselor Scully?
Yes.
Counselor Scully votes yes. Counselor Smith?
Yes.
Counselor Smith votes yes. Counselor Bowles?
Yes.
And Counselor Bowles votes yes.
I have a motion that is carried on a 7-0 vote. Therefore, the motion carries. Moving on to our next item. There are no appointments or resignations tonight. We will move to item 10. Is a public hearing and approve the 7th amended preliminary development plan for Northwest Business Park. At this point, I will turn to the staff, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilors. This is Rita McConnell. I'm the Planning Manager in the city's Planning Division. I would also like to recognize Patrick Caldwell in his absence for his contribution on the staff agenda and the PowerPoint presentation. Also in attendance are 2 other staff members who will be assisting with questions this evening, and I would ask that they introduce themselves at this time.
John McConnell, Principal Planner.
Keith Klein, Transportation Engineer.
Okay. The applicant is amending the preliminary development plan, which I'll refer to as the PDP, to remove a restaurant use, change a private park to residential use, and shift parcel lines to accommodate the proposed uses, as well as to accommodate a realignment of a drive aisle. Proposed exceptions for design and setbacks are also requested. Next slide, please. Regarding the public record, we do require that there are certain notifications that need to be met. To change a land use in the PDP and to allow exceptions to design standards, a public hearing is required. A staff agenda memo has been provided to City Council in the hearing packet and posted on the website. Tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. At this time, I will enter into the public record the agenda memo and its associated attachments, tonight's PowerPoint presentation, the notice published in the Westminster window on March 12, 2020, the notice that was mailed to property owners within 300 feet on March 12, 2020, and an additional addendum letter was also mailed out on March 18, 2020 to property owners within 300 feet with information on providing testimony and live streaming information for tonight's public hearing. And the notice was also posted via signage on the property on March 12, 2020. Next slide, please. This is the vicinity map. The applicable parcels are shown in red borders. Lot 6 and 7 have restaurant uses that will be removed and replaced with private park with this amendment. Lot E1, currently designated as private park, will combine with lots 7 and 10 for residential use with a live-work component. Lot 4 will also be used for such uses as residential and live-work. There are also various shifts in parcel configurations with most of these parcels. To the west and northwest are existing office buildings in the Northwest Business Park. A vacant parcel in the same development is to the north and is anticipated to be used as office use as well. Private drive aisles with access easements provide the access from adjacent public streets. Westminster Boulevard provides access from the east. West 112th Avenue provides access from the north. The Sink 36 apartment is to the south and has an internal drive that will also connect with the southern access to this site. The Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad is at the western edge. Next slide, please. This slide pertains to criteria 1 through 4 of the preliminary development plan in the Westminster Municipal Code. There are 10 criteria in total, and this is the basis of consideration for approval of PDP amendments. Staff finds that the PDP application generally meets all these criteria as outlined in the agenda memo, and there is more detail as to compliance with that criteria. The first 4 criteria are that the PDP is in conformance with applicable codes, follows appropriate planning principles, identifies any exceptions sought, and that the PDP is compatible with surrounding development. Exceptions to the city's multifamily standards are noted in the PDP for the official development plan, also known as the ODP, that has been reviewed concurrently with this PDP amendment. These amendments are listed on a later slide. Next slide, please. Criteria 5 through 7 ensure that the project does not adversely affect and is not adversely affected by surrounding development, and that travel to and from the intended project site is safely established. The traffic study submitted indicated that the existing roads, signals, sidewalks, and other infrastructure are adequate and can accommodate an attached residential use on these tracts and lots with no adverse effects to surrounding property. The city's traffic staff have reviewed the traffic study and concurs with this analysis. Next slide, please. The final 3 criteria ensure that the project may meet any land dedications that may be needed to facilitate its development, that a corresponding ODP will be able to meet the criteria of the PDP, and that the applicant does not have any outstanding obligations to the city. All street dedications and improvements along Westminster Boulevard were made with the construction of the existing 2 office buildings prior to 2005, and no additional right-of-way is needed along Westminster Boulevard. As part of this development, additional right-of-way dedication and improvements will be completed along the West 112th Avenue right-of-way. These improvements will complete the outstanding obligations to the city. The applicant has concurrently submitted an ODP with this PDP that will also be able to meet the criteria of the PDP. The applicant for this project will be addressing these 10 criteria further in their presentation as well. Next slide, please. Exceptions to multifamily design standards. The design standards for mixed use comprehensive plan land use designation of this property do not exist, and the proposed live-work product most closely fits with the general expectations for multifamily design standards. That being said, to accomplish this somewhat unique blend of commercial and residential use, exceptions to the multifamily design standards were requested that address those items listed on this slide. Next slide, please. Staff finds that the proposed PDP amendment will support a vibrant, inclusive, and engaged community. The plan will provide pedestrian and vehicle access to amenities in the nearby promenade. Office employment is adjacent, and similar residential development is immediately adjacent at the south. Rearranging the existing lots and tracks and removing the restaurant use on lots 6 and 8 to become private park use facilitates achieving this goal as well. Next slide, please. Staff's recommendation is to approve the 7th amended preliminary development Northwest Business Park Planned Unit Development. The recommendation of approval is based on the finding that the PDP amendment is generally supported by the criteria set forth in section 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code. Planning Commission also recommended approval unanimously after a Planning Commission hearing on February 25th. There was no one from the public present for testimony. That concludes my presentation. Staff is available for questions. And the applicant is also virtually attending this evening and has a presentation to share with you as well.
All right, thank you, Ms. McConnell. I'll turn to the city council. If there's any questions of staff at this time, if you would please signify that you have a question. Mr. Seymour, did you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Go ahead.
If I may ask, what the building height variance is on the exception?
John McConnell will be addressing that question if you're ready, John.
Yes, thank you. So the exception for building height is for buildings with more than 2 stories. They're supposed to be stepped down at the edges of the structures by 1 story to minimum to aid transition between buildings and to reduce the mass of the buildings. Vertical planes extending more than 2 stories on taller buildings should be avoided. This goes back to the overall issue that the developer and the city wrestled with on this property, and that is that the city does not have really urban design standards for multifamily or mixed-use developments. We had to essentially try to shoehorn the multifamily design standards into this project. The multifamily design standards were really intended for greenfield, kind of suburban multifamily projects. They weren't really designed for urban infill. And so the staff in reviewing this really felt like the exception was warranted to get an urban design that really fits in with the existing office park.
Mr. Seymour, have you any other questions?
I have one more question, if I may. And what is the density classification for this property?
Stand by and I'll get for you.
Hold on.
So, Mr. Seymour, this property is designated mixed use. Mixed use allows up to 36 dwelling units per acre.
Thank you very much. That's all my questions, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I apologize if I've missed some of this along the way. And I submitted my first question earlier today and I did get a response back, but I wanted it to be on the record and I wanted to make sure that the public could hear the answer to it. So will this development be completing the sidewalk between 112 and the bridge on the south side of 112?
Ms. McConnell, who you want to answer that?
I am looking for Heath Klein. He's available.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Scully, the developer will be required to do the improvements along the south half of 112th Avenue from the railroad tracks, which is their western boundary, to Westminster Boulevard. So they will have to construct curb, gutter, sidewalk, additional asphalt to account for an eastbound bicycle lane, and ultimately 2 eastbound travel lanes and the center turn lane. In addition to that, when they connect Reed Way or Quay Way, the private road up internal to the development up to 112th, they will connect to the existing signalized intersection of 112th and Reed Way. When Broomfield built that signalized intersection, they installed the pole and the signal mast arm for this 4th leg of that intersection.
Thank you. My other question is I understand that the density classification is R36. This particular plan, do we have a number of units on the housing proposed? And if we do, is there any affordable or attainable housing being considered?
Okay, we are looking that information up. This is Rita.
I'm sorry, that was a surprise question. I apologize.
If Patrick was here, he'd answer it that quick.
It's one you can get back to me on as well. It's easier.
Okay, I've noted it and we're looking it up.
Ms. McConnell, can we go to the next question while you're doing that? And when you find the answer, we'll come back.
Yes,
All right,
Mayor.
Ms. Scully, do you have another question?
I do. This is mixed use, and so I believe the bottom floor is going to be used for commercial usage. Is that going to be mostly office space, or are we actually envisioning stores in that area? It seems kind of off the beaten path. So I was just curious if we had any idea what kind of marketing might go in there.
Yeah, so let me answer the density question and then we can talk about the actual uses anticipated with John weighing in on that as he looks at the plan. The density is 34 dwelling units per acre. Apologize for the delay.
No, it's my bad. I think I caught you out by surprise. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Typically with live work, you're not going to see a retail component, but we will confirm those uses if they're that specific. You typically see office or low traffic service type uses. If you're familiar with what we have at the promenade, that's the type of activity. Also Bradburn and Belmar and Lakewood. It's not really high traffic generating restaurant bar type uses. We're going to see architects' offices, maybe some beauty salons, but we'll see if we have some specific uses listed there.
Thank you.
And Millie will also ask if you would like, you can present that question to the applicant when they come on.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Scully?
No, sir.
All right, Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question I asked previously, but I'd like to know if there is going to be a signal for this new development between Jefferson Academy and Westminster. I know that we might have a partnership with them, so I just wanted to see if there will be a signalized intersection added to that 112th fairway.
Heath Klein.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Smith. Yes, there, a couple of years ago, the city and county of Broomfield, when they were developing that northwest corner, they recently constructed a signalized intersection at 112th and Reed Way, which is the north-south running street on the east side of Jefferson Academy. So that did get signalized in the last couple of years, and they did plan for this development to connect to that signalized intersection. What the developer will have to do is install like the wiring and some signal heads to make that fully functional and then contribute to the design and construction of that signal, but it is ready to be connected to, and so this development will have a signalized intersection to connect to 112th Avenue.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Any other questions, Ms. Smith?
No, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Seitz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to start with my questions in regards to transportation, just as it sounds like Mr. Klein's already prepped to answer these. Having been on council for the last 6 years, I've heard lots of concerns about the intersection at 112th and Main or Westminster Boulevard, depending on which, if you're going south or north. I'm curious as to, do we feel that the improvements that the developer will be obligated to make on 112th, those right-of-ways and those improvements will help alleviate some of that congestion?
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yes, by constructing the second eastbound travel lane along their property frontage, that will help the eastbound traffic. And then as we did try to improve that intersection with the Broomfield project a couple of years ago, we did try to get the 2 eastbound lanes at the actual intersection. But to answer your question, yes, by doing the improvements along their property frontage, this will help the situation that we are seeing at 112th and Main or Westminster Boulevard.
And I guess to add on to that, will it help with circulation? Will that access point allow people to get to those office buildings off of 112th? Or will they still have to
Yes.
go on to? Okay, so kind of it might help for a multitude of reasons.
Correct.
Okay.
Currently, the existing business at Circle Point, they do have a hard time turning left, especially during the peak hours, to go northbound on Westminster Boulevard. So by this development connecting to 112th at the signalized intersection, those who wish to go north or go east from 112th will be able to go to that signalized intersection, thus improving the safety and the mobility for all the users, existing and proposed.
And I just want to make sure, I know this is in the report, but I just want to clarify, there was no opposition, is that correct, to this PDP proposal?
That is, hold on. Sorry.
I'm sorry, at Planning Commission?
Yeah, you're right. There was no opposition and there was no one speaking to it.
And this comp plan designation was done in 2013, is that correct?
2013. Sorry, I'm working with texting to get you some answers at the same time. Can you please restate that?
My understanding is the comp plan designation that contemplated mixed use was done in 2013. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That's when we anticipated mixed use and designated that in a number of locations throughout the city that we're reevaluating.
And so water consumption impact on infrastructure has been part of our master planning along the way?
Yes, that is correct. The water needs in water supply has been anticipated with the comp plan, and this was one of those designated uses within the comp plan, so we anticipated it will be accommodated. The public works staff are involved in PDP amendments and review these applications and have not indicated any issues with water supply.
Okay, how about infrastructure capacity?
That would apply as well. Everything is evaluated as part of that review when it goes to the public works review.
Thank you so much. Those are my questions.
Mr. Voles?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question was just answered. I also wanted to confirm that there was no opposition to this project by anyone in the surrounding neighborhoods. And it sounds like we've had no opposition to this so far. That was my question. So it's already been answered, but thank you very much. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Klein, I know we've had this conversation on a number of occasions, and I just had, within the last 2 weeks, had another sit down on Burlington Northern. No matter what we do on this development, it is not going to fix the bottleneck at Burlington Northern's track crossing. That is still going to be a single lane in each direction. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mayor. It would take a Public Utilities Commission application, coordination with Broomfield, BNSF, and the City of Westminster to improve that. We are looking at future improvements at the BNS crossing, but the developer would not be responsible for that.
Okay. Ms. Smith, you have another question?
So it will continue to be a bottleneck. Sorry.
All right.
So
that's okay.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that not anyone is anticipating this going to fix that problem, because it's not within the future of Burlington Northern, to my understanding.
That is correct. The bottleneck will remain.
All right. Ms. Smith, you had another question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is confirming that the developer will upsize the sewer line behind the EMC.
Ms. McConnell, can you understand her? Because I couldn't understand her
Yeah,
question.
she's asking about the sewer upgrade. John McConnell has information relative to that. I think he should address that at this time.
Okay.
That is correct. The developer would be responsible for the required upsizing downstream. That upsizing will primarily occur on the west side of or behind the movie theater at the Promenade.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Are there any other questions of staff at this time from the council? Staff, do you have any other information before we go to the applicant?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Regarding the question about the uses, personal services and office type uses are anticipated for the live work. There is another building that does contain some retail uses as well. But the live work is the typical live work office service type stuff. And I think the applicant can further address that.
All right, so any other comments? I'd like to go to the applicant at this time. If the applicant is on the line, would like to present, please do. And for the
Thank you,
record,
Mr. Mayor.
who's on?
Yes, this is Russell Holmes, Director of Business Development for City Office REIT. And before we start the slides, by way of background, City Office is a publicly traded real estate investment trust traded on the New York Stock Exchange with over $1 billion in properties in the southern and western U.S. We currently own all of the buildings and lands within the Northwest Business Park, more commonly known as Circle Point, and we are under contract to sell the mixed-use portion of the site to the Dinnerstein companies, who are also on the phone tonight. We want to thank Rita, John, Heath, and Patrick, and the entire city staff for their efforts and insights on this project. And we also want to thank the mayor and city council for their time and consideration this evening. Next slide, please. And if we could skip one more ahead, I think we're oriented on the area map. Thank you. So the blue outline on the left-hand side shows all of the Northwest Business Park, which includes our 2 existing office buildings and the vacant land parcels. On the right, the orange outline indicates the subject of this PDP amendment, which are the mixed-use and private park parcels. Next slide, please. To frame this PDP amendment, we first would like to review the overall objectives of the Circle Point development. First, Circle Point is planned to be a mixed-use development consisting of office, multifamily, commercial, and park space. It is intended to have complementary and integrated uses. For instance, residents of the mixed use may work in the office buildings, and office users may use the residential fitness facility and commercial offerings on the mixed use portion. Each of the uses is tied together by the central park amenity. Next, Circle Point is intended to be connected and pedestrian friendly, not only within the Northwest Business Park, but also providing connectivity to the Sync 36 multifamily development to the south, and ultimately to the Westminster Promenade. Last, high quality design and construction is essential to the development. The existing office buildings in Circle Park were developed to a Class A standard, and that is what is contemplated for the balance of the development. Next slide, please. On slides 5 and 6, these renderings of the mixed-use, multifamily, and office buildings are indicative of the quality and character of future development. As Rita mentioned, an ODP is being processed concurrently by the Dinnerstein companies for the mixed-use portion of the site. This slide 5 shows 2 of the mixed-use buildings that will front the circle. Next slide, please. Sorry, one backwards. So on the prior slide with the office rendering, that was the preliminary rendering of the potential office building on lot 3, which is in the northwest corner of the development, but not subject to this PDP amendment. Next slide, please. So moving on to the objectives, specifically of the 7th amended PDP, there's several main objectives of the 7th amended PDP. First of which is to align with the existing Sync 36 multifamily development to the south. Second, to realign lots and relocate park space for a more practical development alignment. Third, to identify the nature and timing of public improvements. And fourth, to provide standards for development of mixed-use lots. And I'll touch briefly on each of those in the coming slides. Next slide, please. So as you can see here, the left-hand image is an overlay of the prior PDP. As you can see, the pedestrian and drive aisle, which was previously tracked D2, terminated to a building on the existing Sync 36 development. On the right-hand side, you can see that the new tract D2A now connects to the Sync 36 development, improving continuity for both vehicular and pedestrian traffic. Next slide. Thank you. So there were a few reasons for the realignment of lots and tracks with this PDP amendment. First, we moved the drive aisle, as I just mentioned. Second, we removed restaurant uses from lots 6 and 8, which are located in the circle. Restaurant use was not consistent with the comprehensive plan, and we desire to keep the park amenity intact. We therefore shifted the park use in tract E1 to lots 6 and 8 in the circle. Last, as a result, we ended up with several adjacent mixed-use lots, so we combined them into a new lot 7A. Next slide, please. Just for further detail on lots 6 and 8, this shows lots 6 and 8, which were restaurant use in the prior PDP. They're truly incorporated as a park and are maintained by the NBC Metropolitan District. The park is an important and well-used amenity at Circle Point, and we'd like to keep that intact for both our office, current office, and future mixed-use uses. Next slide, please. So this slide 11 summarizes the net effect of this realignment. Generally, there's very little to no impact on overall land uses. This PDP amendment removes restaurant use consistent with the comprehensive plan. It also relocates park area from tract E1 to lot 6 and 8, and that resulted in a net loss of a fractional acre, which is more than made up for by the internal green space in the mixed-use development. Last, with multiple adjacent lots with the same land use, tract E1 and lots 7 and 10 were combined. Next slide, please. And speaking to some of the questions earlier, the third goal of the amended PDP is to identify the nature and timing of public improvements. We will be competing some significant public improvements at our cost, the first of which being the blue circle on the right-hand side, which completes the connection between 112th Avenue and the circle, also known as Quay Street. This will improve traffic flow and create a new safe ingress and egress to the site. Second, in the red circle, we will be undergrounding overhead utility lines and completing 112th Avenue improvements, including, as Heath mentioned, 2 eastbound travel lanes, a bike lane, curb gutter, tree lawn, and a detached sidewalk. Next slide, please. Further on the public improvements, the building pictured on this slide is the AMC Theater and the Westminster Promenade. We'll be upsizing the existing public 8-inch sanitary sewer main to a 10-inch sanitary main with the first development on the site. Next slide, please. And so Rita touched on this as well. The PDP provides standards for mixed-use development, and certain exceptions to multifamily design guidelines were required due to the shape of the site, as well as to be consistent with the urban character of the development. These exceptions are listed on this slide. And with that, that concludes our prepared remarks for this evening. We're happy to answer any questions, and thanks everyone for their time.
Ms. Light, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for this presentation. So I do have just a couple of questions. One of the goals that was stated for Circle Point was that it was connected and pedestrian friendly. So I'm curious about the need and what the exception really looks like for that pedestrian and bicycle access that was just up on that last slide.
Sure, and for that, I've got the Dinnerstein companies on the phone who can speak specifically to their development. So I will turn it over to either Josh or Brendan or their team for that question.
All right, gentlemen, as you're providing information, do us a favor, get as close to your microphones as you can, because some of us were losing your voice.
My apologies. Was that me that you could not hear, Mr. Mayor?
No, it's the applicant.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, this is Josh Fastbinder with the Dinnerstein Companies. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, appreciate the time this evening, City Council members and staff. Thank you again for the opportunity. So if you'll just repeat the question, make sure I understand it, and then I'm happy to answer it.
Yeah, so at the beginning of your presentation, there was a slide talking about the goals for development at Circle Point. One of the things was connected and pedestrian friendly. And then later, we had seen both in the city staff's presentation and in your own presentation that one of the exceptions that was requested was in regards to pedestrian and bike. And it was on the last slide. I apologize, it's off, but it was about bike and pedestrian access. Can you describe what the exception is? What does that look like?
Yeah, so question, but I could talk specific about the development itself and how we believe it does create better compatibility with the 261 units that we'll be developing here, given its proximity to the existing office buildings directly adjacent to us, and then the existing apartments to the south, and then the retail, realigning our drive to connect all the way from 112th through Quay Street, through the Circle, our site, then realigning it to Sync 36. We believe, again, that creates better connectivity, better pedestrian and bicycle connectivity, and then our uses specifically, including the live work. It was referenced earlier about the commercial space. We've got approximately 3,100 square feet of commercial space that'll be on the Circle. So we think all of those things combined with the way that we're targeting the demographic there, that those create for better uses, better connectivity, and hence, again, supporting hopefully the exception that we're asking for.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, would it be okay for staff to answer from the staff perspective?
Yeah, go ahead. Ms. McConnell, would you direct the answer there? Ms.
McConnell, you may be muted.
In lieu of John's answer, this is Russell Holmes with City Office REIT. Specifically, this exception relates to the requirement that multi-use paths be connected to the city's regional trail and on-street bicycle system. So the justification here for the exception is that the project is not directly adjacent to the city's regional trail system, and connections could not be made through neighboring properties to get to existing systems. So the residential connections are continued from the development through the south to the Metro Park to the north, and through the project's internal street network, providing valuable connections for pedestrians and cyclists that are not available today.
Okay. Let me try to go back. Ms. McConnell, are you back?
Yes, I am. Sorry about that. John McConnell is prepared to add to that. We think the applicant did a good job of addressing it, but John can add commentary as well.
All right, Mr. McConnell, would you please?
Yes, I think the applicant did a great job of explaining that. Essentially, it goes back to our multifamily design standards were really built for a more suburban context. And in those contexts, we are typically on a large greenfield site. A lot of times it might be adjacent to existing parks and open space or nearby. And those guidelines require the connection of this development to those existing amenities. In this context, it's more urban in nature and infill in nature. It's really isolated from any existing public parks and public trails. And so what the developer did, in lieu of following the design standards to a letter, they enhanced the existing park within the Circle by ensuring that park would always remain a park, also connecting all of the residents to the existing park through a series of sidewalks and internal trails, also in connecting that park up to 112th to an enhanced sidewalk network. So it's a different way of accomplishing essentially what was intended in the multifamily design standards.
Ms. Slate, does that
Thank
answer your
you.
question?
It does. I appreciate staff allowing for flexibility to meet the goals of the policy rather than the letter of the policy. I do have one question, and I don't know if this is most appropriate for staff or for the applicant. Earlier, we heard from Ms. McConnell in regards to some of the other mixed use centers that we have that have first floor commercial uses. And one of the things that I am concerned at is actually we've had some that we as a council thought we were approving mixed use, and it turned out that they were not live work, they just ended up being live, that they did not have any commercial component in actuality. Is there any way to monitor that these actually have that commercial component on the first floor? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes,
Don't all
you're
rush
asking
into
whether-
answer at the same time.
We'll probably get a couple answers, one from us and one from the applicant. And I think you're referencing Promenade in particular, where we see very little work happening with the live. A lot of it has to do with the construction of it, how it's constructed to accommodate commercial. Sometimes it's very difficult to convert that to residential use, or it just makes it a little bit more opportunistic for the work side of it. From our standpoint on the ODP, we have it listed on the ODP, and that would be an enforceable provision to ensure that that happens. I think the applicant might want to address that as well.
Mr. Russell, would you like to do that?
Sure, and I'll defer to maybe Josh is best equipped to speak to the intentions of the mixed-use commercial. Josh, is that something you'd like to address?
Yeah, happy to jump in here and address it. I think, we've had other projects where we've had similar issues or concerns that those spaces end up not getting occupied by commercial users. And where we found that we've had lack of success is really on the design of those spaces. So knowing that this is going to be a requirement and something that's sensitive to the city and something we want to see succeed, we've spent a lot of time with our architectural team at KTGY there to make sure that those layouts were successful from a live work component. We weren't allocating too much space to one or the other, the way they were oriented on the street, the access to those spaces. So it's our intent and desire to make sure that they're, live work spaces and live work rented. We've again had success in the past where they've been designed appropriately. We do feel like the demographic in the market is shifting to more work from home. And, the fact that we're all on a call tonight, doing this remotely is probably accelerating that process to a degree. And so again, we feel like the design of these spaces and the way that they've been oriented and laid out in the site will hopefully allow for success. Going back to the ODP and the way it's structured there, I don't know if that's sufficient for the city to kind of hold our feet to the fire, but it's certainly our intent to lease those spaces as we've described this evening.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Lights, does that answer your question?
It does indeed.
Do you have others, or are you finished?
I am finished. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from council of the applicant at this time?
I
Okay,
believe
seeing none.
Councilor Seymour is indicated.
Well, I don't have him up on my list right now.
No questions for
Oh,
me,
I
Mr.
apologize.
Mayor.
Okay.
If there are no other questions from council staff, do you have anything to wrap up?
No, we don't.
Okay. And as I understand, this was a proposal or the city council recommendation from the city planning commission that this was 7-0 vote in favor of, correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. All right. All right, this time, if there are no other comments or questions from council of either the applicant or staff, I'm going to declare that the public hearing is closed. And with the public hearing being closed and the recommendation, Mr. DeMott, we'll turn to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the Fourth Amendment Preliminary Development Plan 3M Planned Unit Development, part of the filing number 2, second replat of 4A or Lot 4A, and the second replat of Lot 3C of the third
Dave, you're on the
replat.
wrong one. Sorry, Mr. Demott. Move back up to A2.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the 7th amended preliminary development plan of the Northwest Business Park.
And Mr. Seymour,
I
you'd like
second that,
to,
Mr.
you are good. So now we have the right one. All right, I have a motion and a second for approval of the 7th amended preliminary development plan. Is there any discussion by council? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Parker, would you take the roll, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a roll call vote for item 10A2, approval of the 7th amended preliminary development plan for Northwest Business Park. Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sites votes yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Councilor Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Councilor Smith votes yes. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Mayor Atchison votes yes.
Thank you, council. The motion is affirmed with a 7-0 vote. All right, gentlemen, you're on your way.
Thank you.
Therefore, the motion
Thank
is carried on a 7-0 vote for the record. Next item on the agenda, we're going to move to item 10B. This is the 4th amended preliminary development plan for 3M unit development, part of filing 2, second replat, lot 4A, and second replat. At this time, I'll move to the staff and ask you to start, please.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. This is Rita McConnell, again, Planning Manager. Also in attendance is John McConnell, Principal Planner, and Heath Klein, Transportation Engineer. Again, we applaud Patrick Caldwell's efforts on preparing the staff agenda and the PowerPoint presentation. The applicant is proposing removal of the office showroom land use on lots 3C and 4A and adding residential land use to the other remaining allowed uses of office and commercial. Also proposed are exceptions to the traditional mixed-use neighborhood development, also referred to as TMUN, design standards for design and setbacks in the preliminary development plan, which I'll reference as PDP. Next slide, please. To change the land use designation in a PDP and to also allow exceptions to the design standards, a public hearing with public notice is required prior to review by City Council. A staff agenda memo has been created and provided to City Council in their packet and has also been posted to the city's website. Tonight's public hearing has been properly noticed. At this time, I will enter into the public record the agenda memo and its associated attachments. Tonight's PowerPoint presentation. Notice was published in the Westminster Window on March 12, 2020. Notice was also mailed to property owners within 300 feet on March 12, 2020. An addendum letter was also mailed on March 18, 2020 to property owners within 300 feet. And this contained information on providing testimony and live streaming for tonight's public hearing. And the notice was also posted on the property on March 12, 2020. Next slide, please. This is the vicinity map. Lots 3 and 4A are shown bounded by red borders on the vicinity map. The total acreage of these two parcels is 2.75 acres. The lots are immediately south of the Whole Foods on the south side of Main Street. The lots are on the north side of 118th Place, and the lots are located between Tennyson Avenue and Vrain Street. Access to the site is provided by the adjacent roadways. Next slide, please. Section 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code contains 10 criteria that are the basis of consideration for approval of PDP amendments. Staff finds that the PDP application generally meets these criteria as outlined in the agenda memo. The first 4 criteria are the PDP is in compliance with applicable codes, follows appropriate planning principles, identifies any exceptions sought, and that the PDP is compatible with surrounding development. Exceptions to the city's TMUN design standards are noted in the PDP and are separately listed on an upcoming slide. Next slide, please. Criteria 5 through 7 ensure that the project does not adversely affect and is not adversely affected by surrounding development, and that travel to and from the intended project site is safely established. The traffic study indicated that the existing roads, signals, sidewalks, and other infrastructure are adequate and can accommodate an attached residential use on lots 3C and 4A with no adverse effects to the surrounding property. Next slide, please. The final 3 criteria ensure that the project may meet any land dedications that may be needed to facilitate its development, that a corresponding ODP will be able to meet the criteria of the PDP, and that the applicant does not have any outstanding obligations to the city. All other land within the 3M PDP has been developed, so the city will accept cash in lieu of land for this residential use. All street dedications for these 2 lots were made with nearby development in 2015, and no additional right-of-way is needed. The applicant has concurrently with this PDP review submitted an ODP that will be able to meet the criteria of the PDP. The applicant does not have any outstanding obligations to the city. The applicant will also be addressing these 10 criteria further in their presentation. Next slide, please. Exceptions to TMUN design standards. Innovation housing product fits the vision of the TMUN concept. This particular product type and design was not envisioned when TMUN standards were adopted. The design exceptions focus on design and site design related items to accommodate this somewhat unique housing concept. These include reduced lot depth, a slightly reduced garage size, decreased building separation, and the allowance for rooftop outdoor space as a trade-off for ground level space. Setback exceptions address building, parking, and landscaping. The ODP that is in for concurrent administrative review supports these exceptions. Next slide, please. Staff finds that the proposed PDP amendment supports a vibrant, inclusive, and engaged community. The plan will provide easy access to amenities, shopping, employment, and is adjacent to diverse integrated housing options in the adjacent Bradbourne development. Next slide, please. Okay, staff's recommendation is to approve the 4th amended preliminary development plan, 3M PUD, to add residential as an allowed use to lots 3C and 4A, remove office showroom as an allowed use on lots 3C and 4A, and allow 9 exceptions to the TMUN design standards and setbacks. The recommendation of approval is based on a finding that the PDP amendment is generally supported by the criteria set forth in Section 11.5.14 of the Westminster Municipal Code. Planning Commission also recommended approval with a 7-0 vote at public hearing on February 25th, 2020. 1 person provided public testimony at the hearing. A member of the board of the adjacent Bradbourne Homeowners Association spoke in favor of the proposal. That concludes my presentation. Staff's available for questions, and the applicant is also available for a presentation.
Okay. I'll turn to the city council. Are there any questions of the staff at this time? Mr. Bowles?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just had a quick question. Are there any exceptions related to parking in that area? I thought I read that there were some parking that was over the minimum standard, some under. how does that, can someone speak to that for me?
Ms. McConnell.
Yes, John McConnell will be addressing any exceptions.
All right, John, if you would, please.
Yes, Councilor Vols, there are no exceptions requested on the parking. The exceptions are listed on the PDP. There are 9. Most of them, if not all of them, are really relative to setback, garage size, and lot size, and outdoor amenity space.
Okay, thank you for that. So this project, when completed out, will have more than the minimum requirement for parking for that area.
It will meet the minimum requirement. I can't guarantee you it'll have more than the minimum requirement.
Okay. And then also I want to confirm what I thought I heard Rita say earlier, that the HOA for Bradburn Village did send a representative and they support this project, which is, I guess, the nearest homeowners association to this project.
Yes.
That's correct. The Bradburn Neighborhood Association has endorsed the project. Representative from the HOA did attend the Planning Commission hearing. That was the sole person that spoke from the public at the Planning Commission hearing, and they did speak in support.
Very good. Thank you for that. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a great location for housing. It's really close to grocery stores and restaurants, and making it very convenient for walking. Is there any consideration for attainable or affordable housing?
So this is John again. I think that would be best answered by the developer. To my knowledge, there is no plans for attainable or affordable, but the developer could probably confirm that for you.
And my other question is, and this is more to the city, how does this fit within the water plan for the city?
This is John again. I can answer that. This has been reviewed by our Public Works and Utilities Department. The water supply is calculated based on the land use, and the Public Works Department is satisfied that this fits within the water model.
Thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Scully?
No, sir.
Okay. I have a question from Ms. Smith. Is this a change in our comp plan? Ms. McConnell?
No, it is not. This is a PDP amendment. It's not a change in the comp plan. That's a separate application. And
Okay.
that's not required in this case.
Council, any other questions of staff at this time? Seeing no other questions, I'll move to the applicant. If you'd like to come online and give us your presentation, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson.
This is Roger Pexock with Continuum Partners. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
All right, great. Thank you. Again, this is Roger Pexock with Continuum Partners. I'm going to walk through a little bit into a little background and walk through the PDP amendment. We have been working closely with Moonstar Investments. So after, towards the end of my presentation, I'll turn it over to Scott Axelrod with Moonstar. Scott has submitted and is processing concurrently an ODP for his proposed townhome development. So you have the context of what he's proposing to look at concurrent with the PDP. So with that, we can go to the next slide. Wanted to just say too, I joined Continuum. I'm a development director at Continuum. I joined almost 20 years ago, which is about when Continuum started its work on the Bradburn Village. I started working on Bradburn about halfway through that tenure, so about 10 years ago. And I would like to say I've spent, throughout that 10 years, we've been working with the city and various developers and very closely with the HOA to try to figure out, the best use to develop these final lots on this property. And this effort and this PDP and ODP are the culmination of those efforts. And we are very appreciative of the very diligent effort that the staff has put in to work through this PDP amendment and the exceptions that we're requesting within it, because we think it's a great solution to this land. We're very appreciative that the Planning Commission supported this as well. And also the HOA. We've worked very closely with the HOA all throughout this project. They're, of course, very anxious to see Bradburn get finished up here. And we were thrilled that they were so supportive of the project that the board did send in a letter, and as was mentioned, did send a delegate to come speak for the board in support of the project. So we're very happy that we're here with their support. What you're looking at here is essentially the ODP, the Bradburn ODP and PDP boundaries on the right, on the east half, and the 3M PDP on the west. Continuum was the master developer of what we call Bradburn Village, which was really everything you're seeing highlighted in that yellow line with the cross hatching, which extends into the northeast area of the 3M PDP. We had originally purchased the land that is in the blue on the east there, and then we processed our original Bradburn ODP and PDP. We shortly thereafter acquired this other quadrant up here. That includes the land with the TCF Bank, the Whole Foods, and Lot 3C and 4A that you're looking there. So these properties have been planned. The infrastructure for this area was planned and installed. All the infrastructure is constructed as part of the overall Bradburn master planning. And it's also consistent with the TMUND designation, which I'll show that map in a minute as well. We have, again, these are the last parcels we have at Bradburn. These two parcels, 3C and 4A. There's actually 3 parcels. There's a third one that's just east of 4A that I wasn't going to talk about, but I have heard the question about affordable or attainable housing. There is a parcel, now that this land is not part of the Bradburn ODP or PDP, it's completely separate from it. But that third parcel we have just east of Lot 4A there, we have been working with the Urban Land Conservancy. We have an executed donation agreement with them. We are giving them the land, and they are going to construct affordable housing or attainable housing. I'm not sure exactly how they've designated it yet on that land, and they'll be doing that certainly in conjunction with the city. Well, with guidance from the city on what the city would like to see there, I should say. So I do want to mention that because we don't have any planned within these lots. So that's the PDP area that we're talking about in those lots. If you go to the next slide, please. What we are asking for in this PDP are really 3 things. One is to add residential as an allowed use in this area, which it's not under the PDP 3M PDP designation that existed previously. We agreed to eliminate the office showroom use, as that use is no longer relevant, not consistent with the vision for Bradburn that I think anybody has for that area, the city, the HOA, or us. But as we've worked through and have tried to find the right use here, we do, with this PDP, are looking for a few exceptions to the design standards in the TMUND designation that we talked a little bit about in the presentation by the staff. Let me go to the next slide, please. As we mentioned, per the city's comp plan, this is in the TMUND designation area. So it fits both within the city's and Bradburn's infrastructure and the city's planning designations. Let's go one more slide, please. So as we have as we have worked through, and as I mentioned, for many years, we've been trying to find the right use for this area. We came across Moonstar Investments. They've been doing, Scott's been doing a lot of development kind of down more in the urban core down in Denver, and really understood how to apply these townhome projects in a little bit more of an urban setting, which has always been kind of the underlying goal of Bradburn, to make it a little more dense, a little more urban. And we've been looking for the right use to transition this area from the commercial use to the west, the Whole Foods to the north, the existing residential project to the east, and the rest of Bradburn development to its east. And Scott has come up with a great plan to develop townhomes in this area, which again, after years of looking through this, is really come to the top as the first choice for all the parties involved, the city, the HOA, and Continuum as well. What Scott has done, and I'll let him talk a little bit more about this plan in just a second, but what he's done a great job of here is providing an appropriate density for these two blocks that transitions in this area. And what he's also done a great job of is providing the private open space in the middle, and the open space, as well as providing great corners to the project. Instead of having these row homes that always create these kind of awkward corner situations, he's turned the units and provided these really strong urban corners, which we just love. And again, we appreciate that staff recognize how strong this plan is that he's come up with. And again, to achieve the plan that he's shown here, we have asked for 9 exceptions as well within the PDP document. With that, we'll go to the next slide. And these are the exceptions. They mostly deal, I don't know if we need to go through them in detail or not. We can, of course, come back if you guys have specific questions about these and answer any specific questions, but they largely have to do with technical separations and lot depths and spacing and setbacks, and where the open space is situated within the site. And again, these are, because of course the TMUND was a broader document, these allow the tweaks that are necessary to those TMUND designations to, or design standards to allow this development as proposed. So if we go to the next plan here, or the next slide, please. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Scott to give a quick overview of his proposed townhomes. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Axelrod, if you would, please.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Scott Axelrod with Moonstar, and we specialize in boutique urban infill projects. When planning our projects, we focus not only on creating a sense of community for our individual project, but how our planned project fits into the broader community that it will be a part of. That is the reason we are so excited about the site in Bradburn Village. I know we're here to discuss the PDP amendment request. However, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the project that approving this amendment would support. The project consists of 58 townhomes in 12 different buildings. They're a mix between 2 and 3 bedroom plans, 42 2-bedrooms, and 16 3-bedroom homes. They range in size from 1,450 square feet to 1,650 square feet. The plan is for these to be for sale homes, therefore quality interior and exterior finishes. We believe that the planned project will offer a quality home in an outstanding location for young people in Westminster that there currently is a need for. For any community, keeping young people in the city with attainably priced, well-located homes is important to having a vibrant, engaged community. We believe our project will contribute favorably to the vibrancy of the Bradburn Village community. One of the aspects of the plan that Roger touched on that we are feel particularly good about and it has been enthusiastically received by the planning staff is the L-shaped buildings at the corners, providing a hard corner that that's the boundary for the project. And we're really pleased with how it turned out. In working with the city's planning staff on our site plan, a few exceptions to the design guidelines were identified in order to make this plan a reality. Those exceptions are incorporated into the PDP amendment you have before you. Thank you for your consideration. We look forward to bringing a quality addition to the Bradburn Village community. I'll turn it now back over to Roger to wrap up and be available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I don't have anything to add. Again, we think this meets the standards of approval. And once again, appreciate everybody's diligent attention to the proposed plans. Thank you very much.
Mr. Axelrod, this is the mayor. I would ask you to consider that you market this not only to what you might refer to as a millennial, but there's some of us old folks that might be interested in this project as well.
And Mr. Mayor, yeah, out of all due respect for us old folks, we have some of our plans that have bedrooms on the ground floor.
That's excellent. Just as a piece of conversation, since these are townhomes and not condominiums, I will expect that each of these will be separately metered in both electrical and water and gas.
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Voles, you have a comment?
I had a question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Do we have an idea what the market value or what these will likely sell for?
You know, we're targeting the high $300,000, low $400,000 price range. As you can imagine, the market's moving pretty significantly.
Yes.
So, but that was the plan when it was originally conceived.
Okay, thank you. And then what does this density add up to? What would we typically call this density for this property?
Ms. McConnell?
Yes, we're working on getting the precise density.
Thank you.
This is Roger Pexock. I can chime in if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I believe the density this comes to is about 18 DU per acre. It kind of depends how you measure it. Going to the midpoint of the streets, because this was subdivided, it was part of a larger planning area. I believe Patrick came out with about 18 DU.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. Can you talk a little bit more about this bicycle storage space? There seems to be something new that you're doing here or some exception.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Can we advance a slide, please? So if you, it's a little hard to see, but let's, look in on the bigger lot in the upper left corner where you've got a building that turns the corner and then a threeplex. Between the two of them is a structure, and in that structure, and there's 4 of them on the site, so 2 on the north piece and 2 on the south. And in that structure is trash enclosure, secured bike storage, and mailbox and Amazon or whoever parcel delivery. So we're taking bike storage out of the garage and moving it to here.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Seymour.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is just a comment. I want to compliment the development group on this. This is a bold vision and fills an incredible need in the marketplace for owned townhome spaces, regardless of the spectrum of the age. And it will be a great benefit to the business owners in the area. So I appreciate that.
At this time, do we have any other questions from the council of the presenter, Ms. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This question may be more for staff, but just looking at what the traffic capacity would be on these interior roads, considering that 120th and Sheridan are kind of the major arteries of that area, that these are kind of tucked away in between this community. So just wondering what the traffic capacity would be like.
Heath Klein.
Good question, Councilor Smith. The traffic capacity for both 118th Avenue can absorb this new development, as well as Rain Street. So we have a signalized intersection with 120th and Vrain, as well as a signalized intersection of 118th Place and Sheridan. And then, as we know, if you go east, they could get to Bradburn Drive and be able to get to a signalized intersection at 120th and Bradburn as well. So in reviewing the traffic impacts, I do not see a big cause for concern.
Okay, thank you. And then my last question is, what would be the water consumption needs for the showroom commercial space versus a residential space?
I'm contemplating that. We don't have that calculation, but this proposal has been reviewed by Public Works staff, and it's within the water budget anticipated. If you would like that answer at some point, we can certainly get that to you. I don't think it would be relevant to your decision at this point, but just know that that has been evaluated as part of the evaluation through Public Works.
Thank you. That would be relevant for a decision further down the road, but I would be interested in the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just meant in the terms of it's not, the cruxus of criteria on this for us to.
Sure.
Okay. I didn't mean any kind of disrespect, just that it's not relevant.
No, you're good. Thank you.
All right. You're welcome.
Are there any other questions of any member of the council to the applicant at this time? Last opportunity. Are there any questions of the staff at this time? Ms. McConnell, I believe your recommendation from the planning staff is to move forward with the approval of the application.
Yes, sir.
And we have confirmation this was a 7-0 approval along with public comments from the planning commission. Is that correct?
Yes, Mayor.
Okay. Ms. Seitz, if you will give me just a second, I'll turn it to you. At this point, I will declare that we need to close the public hearing, and I will now turn to Ms. Seitz for the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the 4th amended preliminary development plan, 3M planned unit development, part of filing number 2, second replat, 4A of second replat, lot 3C of third replat.
Mr. DeMott?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Are there any other questions or comments by council? Ms. Parker, if you would, please, a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a roll call vote for item 10B2, approval of the 4th amended preliminary development plan, 3M planned unit development. Mayor Pro Tem Seitz.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Seitz votes yes. Councilor Seymour?
Yes.
Councilor Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully?
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith?
Yes.
Councilor Smith votes yes. Councilor Voles?
Yes.
Councilor Voles votes yes. Mayor Atchison? Mayor Atchison votes yes. Councilor DeMott?
Yes.
Councilor DeMott votes yes.
Ms. Parker, by my count, we have a 7-0 vote in favor of the application under B2.
Yes, sir.
Therefore, the motion is carried. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it very much, and appreciate you working with us through this very difficult time of doing this the way we're doing it today.
Thank you for making the accommodation, and thank you for your approval, Mr. Mayor and councilors.
All right, ladies and gentlemen,
we appreciate it.
Move on to the next item. This is item C1, Mr. Demott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor Bills number 7 on first reading, providing a supplemental appropriation of funds to the 2019 budget of the General Water and Wastewater Utility Enterprise, Legacy Ridge Walnut Creek Golf Preserve Golf Course Enterprise, Fleet Maintenance, General Capital Outlay Replacement, Parks, Open Space and Trails, Sales and Use Tax, General Capital Improvement, and Community Development Block Grants.
Ms. Sights,
Second.
I have a motion and a second to item C1, Councilor's Bill number 7. Are there any questions or comments by council? Ms. Smith, did you have a comment?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. No, I'm good.
Okay. At this point, I have no comments. We will move on to a voting. Ms. Parker, again, this is a roll call vote on item C1, Councilor's Bill number 7.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Councilor Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Sights votes yes.
All right, thank you, Ms. Parker. The vote is a 7-0 vote in favor. This motion is carried. We'll move on to the next item. Mr. Demott, if you would, C2, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 7, approving the use of contingency funds and reallocation of $127,576 from the general fund contingency account to the 2019 Fire Department's operating budget to cover the department's overages.
Ms. Sights,
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any comments from council on resolution number 7? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, roll call vote for resolution number 7, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Sights votes yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes.
This time I have a 7-0 vote for resolution number 7. Therefore, the motion is carried. Moving on to the item C3. Mr. Demott, we're still back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the reallocation of $6,303 from the 2019 Walnut Creek Golf Preserve Fund Facilities Division budget to cover the fund's central charges operating budget and $53,074 from the 2019 Parks Open Space Trails Fund Parks Operation Division budget to cover the fund's central charges operating budget.
Ms. Sights,
Second.
I have a motion and a second for item C3. Is there any comments or questions from council? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, is a roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sights.
Yes.
Sights votes yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Councilor Scully votes yes.
Motion is therefore carried under item 10C3 with a 7-0 vote. Next item on the agenda is item 10D. This is Councilor's Bill number 8. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to pass Councilor's Bill number 8, authorizing the loan agreement with the Colorado Water Resources and Power Development Authority in an amount not to exceed $30 million.
Ms. Smith.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Council's Bill number 8. Is there any question or comments from council? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, roll call vote, please, for Councilor's Bill number 8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Bowles votes yes. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Sites votes yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
Yes, but I have a quick question. Was Mayor Pro Tem Sites question answered regarding this?
We did receive an email late today, and it appears that it was the answer from bond counsel.
Okay.
Or not bond counsel, rather the issuer, the debt issuer.
Okay.
It's in our
yes.
it's in our inbox.
Then
Did that satisfy
okay,
your Counselor
I
Sites?
haven't seen it yet. I only seen the question come through.
My apologies
I think the question is,
for everyone
Ms. Sites,
listening.
did your question get answered?
My question was answered, and my apologies for everyone listening. This was because I was slow in submitting a question, and so it made it difficult for staff to respond. So Councilor Smith did not have an opportunity to read it, and that was my fault for submitting the question late. So.
Okay. So, Ms. Smith, we're back to you. What is your vote?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Council's Bill number 8 is approved on a 7-0 vote. We will move on to item 10E. Mr. Demott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move, based on the recommendation of the city manager, to find that the public interest will be best served by authorizing negotiated contracts for bond counsel services with Butler Snow LLP, an amount not to exceed $40,000 for disclosure counsel services with Kutak Rock LLC in the amount not to exceed $38,500, both in connection with the proposed refunding of water and wastewater utility enterprise, taxable water and wastewater revenue bonds, Series 2010.
Ms. Smith.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for item 10E regarding public interest for bond counsel. Is there any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, this is a roll call vote. Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Councilor Demott.
Yes.
Demott votes yes. Mayor Pro Tem Sites.
Yes.
Sites votes yes. Councilor Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Councilor Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Councilor Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Councilor Bowles.
Yes.
Councilor Bowles votes yes.
At this point, item 10E is carried on a 7-0 vote. Ladies and gentlemen, that finishes up the business of the Westminster City Council meeting for March 23rd, 2020. We will recess this at this time as the City Council, and we will immediately reconvene as the Westminster Economic Development Authority Board of Directors. First motion on the floor for the WEDA meeting for tonight is the approval of the minutes of March the 9th. Mr. Demott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that the Westminster Economic Development Authority approve the minutes of the March 9th, 2020 meeting as presented.
Mr. Bowles.
I second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion is carried. For the public record, item 3A1 and 3A2, we have received a request this afternoon late from the submitter of this application to withdraw it at this time. We will reschedule it sometime at a later date. We will move on to item B1. This is a public hearing or in regards to resolution number 203. And Mr. Tripp, do we have anyone revolving this one? I think it's going to go to Mr. Hall.
Mayor and council, just the materials we've submitted to you. If you have questions, we'll have staff available to answer those questions.
All right. Is there any comments or questions on regarding the submitting testimony? We'll hold a public hearing. Okay. Is there any question from council? Or I'm sorry, the board of directors in regards to this application?
Mr. Mayor,
Parker,
this is,
go ahead.
yes, thank you. This is Michelle Parker, City Clerk. Just want to verify for you all that the City Clerk's office didn't receive any public testimony regarding this item. Thank you.
All right. All right, we have no public testimony. We have no comments from council. I will go ahead and officially open the public hearing. And if there is no testimony, either electronically or by council at this time. Mr. DeMott, did you have a comment?
No, just waiting to second the motion.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll hang on just a second. All right, then therefore I will close the public hearing and we will move to the adoption of resolution number 203. Ms. Scully, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt resolution number 203, authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the 2019 Westminster Economic Development Authority budget.
Mr. DeMott.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Does any member of the board have any comments or questions? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, if you would please roll call vote on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Board Member DeMott.
Yes.
DeMott votes yes. Vice Chairperson Seitz.
Yes.
Seitz votes yes. Board Member Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Board Member Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Board Member Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Board Member Voles.
Yes.
Voles votes yes. Chairperson Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes.
At this time, the resolution number 203 carries on a vote of 7-0, and we appreciate it. We'll move on to the next item, a public hearing by means of electronic submitted testimony. Ms. Parker, do we have any testimony on item C1?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I can verify that no one submitted any public testimony on this item.
Okay. Council, do you have any, sorry, board, do you have any questions in regards to the public hearing for items 204?
Mayor, it may help the public to understand that this item and the item just previously are really housekeeping procedures related to the URAs. They're the authorized allocation of revenues that were unanticipated. If anybody would like to read more about these, they're contained in the council packet, and there's a further detailed explanation as to the actions that you are being asked to take this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tripp. Are there any other comments from the board or questions? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. I will move to Ms. for authorization of resolution number 204.
Okay. I'm sorry, did you say Ms. Seitz?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to adopt resolution number 204, authorizing a supplemental appropriation to the 2020 Westminster Economic Development Authority budget.
Mr. DeMott.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, roll call vote for item C2, resolution number 204, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Vice Chairperson Seitz.
Yes.
Seitz votes yes. Board Member Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Board Member Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Board Member Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Board Member Voles.
Yes.
Voles votes yes. Chairperson Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Board Member DeMott.
Yes.
DeMott votes yes.
Thank you, ma'am. This is a roll call vote that has resulted in a 7-0 vote in favor of resolution number 204. Moving on to the last item that we have, item D. This is an authorization for the executive director into an agreement with Daniel M. Menzer. Ms. Scully.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to authorize the executive director to enter into an agreement with Daniel M. Mincer, LLC, for work related to the downtown Westminster project on an as-needed basis for the transactional real estate matters in an amount not to exceed $70,000.
Ms. Smith.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or comments from any member of the board? Seeing none, Ms. Parker, if you would please, a roll call vote.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Board Member Seymour.
Yes.
Seymour votes yes. Board Member Scully.
Yes.
Scully votes yes. Board Member Smith.
Yes.
Smith votes yes. Board Member Voles.
Yes.
Voles votes yes. Chairperson Atchison.
Yes.
Atchison votes yes. Board Member DeMott.
Yes.
DeMott votes yes. Vice Chairperson Seitz.
Yes.
Seitz votes yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the business of item D. Only 7-0 vote. This motion passes. For the record, this is the last item we have of business on the Westminster Economic Development Authority Board. That concludes our business, but I think, Mr. Tripp, you had a question you wanted to ask.
Yes, over the course of the last 24 hours, we had a request from State Representative Shannon Bird to consider whether the council would support an amicus brief that relates to the ability for the state legislature to utilize all of the available 120 days they are constitutionally allowed. I won't go further than that. I'm sure the city attorney is going to be much more able to answer the details of this. What I'm here to inform you tonight is that an hour or so ago, we sent you some material on that. We'd like you to take a look at it, and if you have questions about it, please direct those to Chris Lindsay or to your city attorney, Dave Frankel. And if you would, by mid-morning tomorrow, sometime, maybe late in the morning, provide your opinion to us as to whether it's something you want to support.
Don, this is Dave Frankel. I appreciate Chris Lindsay's efforts on preparing the message to council and the work that he's put into it. And to the extent that City Council has any questions, I'm happy to respond to those as they are received.
Okay. Thank you, Dave and Don. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings a conclusion to the first ever virtual City Council meeting in the City of Westminster. And for what it's worth, you guys did a hell of a job, especially our staff in putting this thing together, Michelle for ramrodding this thing through, Matt for being here helping us with all the issues. I am sorry we're having to meet like this, but as everyone can understand the situation we're in from health and safety aspects. Also for the public, we do not have a meeting next week. That is our Monday of the month. We are not scheduled to meet. So our next virtual council meeting, unless things change dramatically over the next 2 weeks, will be in April. At this time, I will call the meeting adjourned and thank everybody for their time and patience, and for the public and those who are on with the applicants. I think everyone did an admirable job trying to make this thing work as best as we could tonight. And thanks to all the council for your patience of getting through this. And even though I may have missed a couple of people on the chat piece getting your sequence, I hope I caught everybody. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.